Those of you who are sure you've had a paranormal experience, what happened and what makes you sure that it was paranormal? Number one, this was a lot more recent, in 2018, before the death of a family member. We had gone to visit her at her house, my aunt. The house itself is almost 100 years old. My father's grandfather built it from the ground up, and it was one of the first houses on that street. My dad had lived there too when he was growing up. Anyway, my aunt's room was right at the end of this tiny hallway, where across the hallway was the door to the bathroom and the door to the rest of the house, across from each other. I had to use the bathroom and was just finishing up washing my hands when I look up and see this woman in complete white. White hair, white nightgown, just completely white and pale. I stopped dead in my tracks and just sort of stared. No one else was living with my aunt. She was completely alone in her part of the house. The door to the bathroom and the door to the rest of the house were open, and this woman was standing in the doorway to the rest of the house. Me in the bathroom. My dad passed me to go see my aunt, and just as he did, this woman stepped out towards me and turned in the direction of my aunt's room and walked in. I didn't move to see if she went in, just sort of followed her with my eyes from where I was standing. I saw my mom come in and decided to join them in my aunt's room. Walking into my aunt's room, she was completely alone. No one else was there. That woman had just vanished. Later I told my parents and explained to them what I saw, how the woman looked. She had a bit of a crooked nose. And my dad just kind of looks up at me through the rearview mirror. We were in the car on our way back home. He tells me that that was his grandmother. The woman I had seen was his grandmother. Kind of makes sense. That house is the type of house to go creak in the night. Number 2. Years ago I was outside smoking at my friend's house. It was fall. It was around 10 or so p.m., and I heard a rustling in the patch of woods nearby. This patch of woods separates his place from the neighbors on the other side, and the patch slopes down a hill until it continues on into a forest behind his house. Anyway, I pull out my phone light and investigate. I grew up in the country, so I can usually tell what it is walking around based on the sounds and the cadence of footsteps. It sounded like a deer, hesitant footsteps, very deliberate. So I shine my light and see 2 reflecting eyes about chest high off the ground, and the tree behind it where its body should be. So I briskly go inside to get my friend. He sees the same thing I do, so if I'm crazy, so is he. We decide that I'll move further down the wood line and he'll walk up from the top down towards me. When this thing wasn't looking at you, it was invisible. You could only see its eyes reflecting off of light, like a dog's. But you could hear it walking, and you could see leaves move where it walked. We would whistle at it, and it would turn to look, so that's how we tracked it. So I was the closest to it. My friend and I had moved into a kind of pincer formation, and I was about 15 feet from it. It moved towards a ditch that rainwater had dug out over time and got lower and lower in stature. The last time I saw it, I whistled and saw its eyes staring at me from underneath the fallen leaves. Then it disappeared. I called to my friend and he rushed over. We cleared away the leaves thinking there was an entrance of some kind. Nothing. Just solid earth. We tried to get video of it initially, but our shitty iPhones at the time couldn't see shit in the dark. The weirdest thing about it was that neither of us ever felt like we were in danger. There was no primal sense of fear or dread. It was like our brains just couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. It reminded me of what H.P. Lovecraft protagonists described when they witnessed the Eldritch minus the insanity. We still have no idea what it was. We recounted the story to each other, just to make sure one of us hadn't lost our mind, and we witnessed the same things. He still lives there, and says he's heard it out walking around a few times since over the years, but it's been a long time since the last time he heard it. He has 5 dogs, and they all lose their shit when they hear anything outside. He says the times he's heard it since, it's like his dogs don't care. They don't even look in the direction of it. Number 3. Possibly. I don't know if I can properly describe this, but I'll try my best. I woke up in the middle of the night and really needed to go to the bathroom. This was when I was a teenager and still living with my parents. The bathroom is on the bottom floor of the house, and I'm on the top floor. I walk out of my room into the pitch black and head into the hall that leads towards the stairs. Once I get about 6 feet from the stairs, I become overwhelmed with the most horrible feeling I've ever experienced in my life. It just came out of nowhere and built up in a matter of seconds, starting from nothing and forming into this all-encompassing, suffocating feeling of what I describe as a mixture of primal fear, hatred, and anger. The whole atmosphere just felt so sickeningly angry and hateful. I can't stress that part enough. Alarm bells were sounding off like crazy in my head, telling me to head back to my room and close the door. I was looking down the staircase at this point, and it was so dark that I couldn't see the bottom, but it felt like something truly ugly and horrible was waiting down there, right at the base of the steps. I remember that my thoughts went totally silent at this point. I was just frozen still like a deer that is sensing a predator nearby. I backed away and slowly walked into my room and shut the door. The feeling gradually disappeared the further I got from the staircase. I felt safe in my room. I stayed in my room all night and didn't fall asleep because I needed to use the bathroom so bad. Never heard any sounds at all that night. No movement outside my door or in the living room downstairs, nothing at all. It took a few hours for the sun to rise, and when it did, I soon heard the sound of my parents getting ready for work in the kitchen. So I left my room and walked back to the stairs. Everything felt totally normal now. I walked downstairs, saw my dad pouring a cup of coffee, and then I speed walked to the bathroom. That was the end of it. There were no signs of a break-in, no signs that anyone was at the bottom of the stairs at all during the night. I never told my parents. There's no logical reason why I should have felt that way. I do think it was probably some sort of psychological phenomenon brought on by something, but I can say for sure that it wasn't an afraid of the dark feeling. Like I said, it felt like I was in the presence of something that absolutely hated me. I've been stalked by a mountain lion before and felt primal fear. The same fear that comes from being afraid of the dark, but not a feeling of hatred and anger. Animals do not hate their prey. This was like the feeling of something sentient and intelligent near me, wanting to hurt me for hateful reasons. I never had anything like that happen before or since. If you've ever had a night terror or sleep paralysis, it felt kind of like that, except I was 100% awake. Number 4. I recently bought a house and moved, but previously lived with my parents in the same house for about 10 years. And it's right next to 2 cemeteries, a church, old Indian grounds right down the hill, and a 6-year-old boy was hit and killed by a dump truck right in front of our house back in the 80s. We, my parents and younger brother and sister, have always had uneasy and weird experiences at this house. Random noises here and there, the sound of chairs scooting on the floor upstairs when nobody was up there, extremely dark spots in the hallways at night, hearing another family member call, say your name when they weren't even home. I had my boyfriend over one day. We were home alone. My brother's room shared a wall with mine, and the hallway leading to our room was always the creepiest in my opinion. My boyfriend and I were just sitting in my room on our phones when we heard 3 slow, distinct knocks on the shared wall. Again, nobody was home, I went in the room to make sure the cats or dog weren't in there, or maybe something fell and hit the wall. Nothing. My brother also wrestled, so my family would go out of town for a night or two for tournaments during wrestling season. I would usually stay home to take care of the dog and cats, and my boyfriend would stay with me. One particular time they were gone, and my boyfriend and I were asleep in my bedroom. I had cracked the door open in case the dogs or cats wanted to come in or out. I was fast asleep, and so was my boyfriend when I woke up to something banging incredibly loud on the bedroom door. Like so loud I thought someone was breaking in. Again, the door was slightly cracked, so if the dog or cats had been hitting it, it would have come open immediately. As soon as I heard it, I shot up and saw that there were no animals in sight, and the door was still only slightly cracked. My boyfriend didn't wake up. I stayed awake for a good hour, unable to even move to face away from the door. I also had my cat for 14 years who recently passed in February. I woke up from a nap one day to the feeling of something laying on my feet, which is the spot he always loved to lay. We also had a family cat for 18 years who passed in January 2021. My boyfriend and I were upstairs cooking, and I saw a flash of white go from the ground to the countertop. The cat was all white and was always jumping on the countertop. After that, my boyfriend and I both heard a meow. We had no other cats at this time, and looked at each other at the same time immediately when it happened. I went downstairs about to tell my mom about it, and she said it before I could. I've always 100% believed in the paranormal, and would love to have more concrete experiences in the future. Number 5. I was having sleep paralysis. My bedroom had one window, which faced the back of the house. The back had a large field, the woods. It was very dark. I noticed my sleep paralysis due to odd events. My cat would sleep with me. He would come to my bed after midnight, and I would be aware of him jumping on my bed while I slept. Then my cat died. One night I felt him jump on my bed, which was okay, until I remembered he was dead. I tried to look, but I couldn't move. This isn't a ghost story. Things like this happened, but different causes. I was having nightmares at this time. The dreams were normal until I saw people with black eyes. The sight always frightened me awake. The eyes held this malevolence. Then I would be paralyzed. I broke my window in the bedroom. Afraid of angering my parents, I placed a thick fiber board between the frame and the window. Summer kicked in hard a while later. The wood of the frame swelled in the summer humidity. The window was stuck closed like a drum. I couldn't open it. While sleeping, I heard this loud sound. It sounded like a giant vacuum. I tried to look, but I was paralyzed. Frozen, I struggled to move. Then I moved my tongue, which broke the paralysis. I sat up and looked at my window. It was just wind sucking air through a rip in the fiberboard. I thought, oh, that's all, and laid back down. Then I thought, roaring wind ripped the thick board. I sat back up and the wind was gone. The curtain was sucked into the rip. I had to use 2 hands to pull the curtain free, and I had to repeatedly kick the fiberboard to pull it apart and open the window. There was no wind outside. I thought the paralysis was just a thing with my body and mind. For the longest time, I couldn't directly remember the event and the other things that happened. It was like a memory with no connection to my consciousness. I only stumbled on them, and I still feel more happened, but don't reach the memories. When I was married, my wife said, "I've almost never seen you sleep. When I go to sleep, you are awake." When I wake up, you are awake. When I rarely catch you sleeping, you wake up screaming like I'm going to murder you. I was unaware. Everything, even the screaming. I kind of know that I'm a light sleeper, but totally unaware I scream if you catch me sleeping. I feel that things happened back when I was a kid, but I just can't remember them. I think they are still happening. I was out of work due to the pandemic, so I was home alone while my wife was working. Then I noticed there was no sound. I could hear my breathing, but no environmental sounds. I went outside and it was the same. I considered talking to my neighbors, but I didn't want to seem strange. That's all I remember. No context of when this happened. Not the day or the month, not what happened after. It's like I just stumbled on the memory a year later. It's like it happened, but I only thought of it a year later. Number 6. When I was in college, I lived in a dormitory run by nuns. We have a study room that was probably 15 student desks on the second floor that is surrounded by jalousie windows. And there was a hallway outside that room. It was finals week, and there were around 10 of us at 2 a.m. studying, and the windows were open because it was hot. When all of a sudden we hear 2 kids, a boy and a girl, giggling and running like they were playing tag in the hallway. We heard their footsteps because it was so loud, but we did not see anybody. We all looked at each other, stood up, grabbed our things, and all moved to the corner of the room. Same dormitory. I have 5 roommates. We all have our own beds, so the room is kind of spacious. I have this one roommate who always goes home every weekend because her hometown is just an hour away from the city, and she would return every Monday early in the morning. One morning at 5 a.m., she walked into the room, loudly opening the door and waking me and my other roommate. We said hi, but she didn't say anything and was ignoring us. So we're like, okay, whatever. It's still early anyway. And then she opened her closet, grabbed her towel and toiletries, then walked out to the bathroom. Me and my other roommate were worried, but we both were thinking that she probably got into a fight with her mom or her boyfriend, so we just went back to sleep. Woke up again at 7 a.m. and we're wondering where that roommate was. Took a shower, and as we were getting ready to go down for breakfast, she walked into the room, huffing and puffing, carrying her bag, and said that she missed the first ferry and was worried she wouldn't make it for her first class. Me and my other roommate looked at each other and said at the same time that she was here at 5 in the morning, all grumpy and mean, wearing the same clothes minus the bag. Then she said, how can she be there at 5 when she was still up at work this morning, missing the first ferry? This probably is the most memorable one out of all my experiences. I was 13 years old and I shared a big room with my mom, my 3-year-old brother, and my 6-year-old sister. This room has a built-in wall that has a big mirror with lights, a long desk and drawers, and when you look in the mirror you can see the silhouette of the trees and wall outside because of the lights we have outside the house. Past the wall is an empty lot that has a lot of trees. One night while I was studying for an exam, I only had one light on, when all of a sudden I heard a flapping of wings. I raised my head, looked at the mirror where I can see what's behind me. What I saw was a silhouette of a bird as big as an American eagle, and the sound saying walk, walk, walk. The sound slowly decreases. Then all of a sudden I cannot move, cannot even utter a sound, and have my eyes fixated on what I was seeing. Then the image starts changing. First it spreads its wings and grows bigger, and I could see something that looks like veins growing around that wings. Then the head starts changing from a bird into a human, and the hair getting longer and kind of spreading like what its wings did. While all of this was happening, I was praying the Lord's Prayer inside my head. I don't know how many times when all of a sudden my brother's nanny barged into the room, and I just started crying. And she said she heard something and was just checking on me. And she said, thank God she came in time. Oh, and I failed that test. What is your paranormal experience? Number 1. I wouldn't say my experience was paranormal, but rather supernatural. 4 years ago, my parents, grandmother, and I visited a very prominent temple in northeastern India. The deity, a goddess, is highly revered and has great historical significance too. My parents and grandmother are very religious. I, on the other hand, am spiritual but not very religious. To add to it, I was going through a very rough phase in life emotionally and wasn't too enthusiastic on participating in anything per se. When we entered the temple premises, there was an unbelievably long queue to enter the inner sanctum/altar of the temple. It would have easily taken about 2 hours for us to get to the front of the queue. I, being not very religious and disinterested, refused to wait in the queue and told my parents that they should go ahead while I sat on the side and waited for them to return. Although my parents, who are very religious, were really looking forward to it, they chose not to leave me alone, and they decided to just pray from outside the temple together and leave. So we walked to the front of the temple facing the entrance to the inner sanctum and stood with hands folded, praying amongst hundreds, literally, of other devotees who were also praying there beside us outside the entrance of the inner sanctum. In that moment of prayer, I truly prayed with all my heart, since I was going through emotional turmoil. I wasn't asking for anything, but rather meditating with folded hands and feeling thankful for everything I had. When we were nearly done praying, a cop, since it's a very primitive temple, the security is handled by the police themselves, walked up to my parents, grandmother, and I and said, "Follow me." We had no clue who this cop was. We had never seen him before, since we had traveled there from another part of the country. We didn't know why he was asking us to follow him, and we didn't know why he came up to us specifically amongst the hundreds of other devotees there. So we followed him. He took us to the side of the temple, opened up a barricade, and proceeded to walk us straight into the inner sanctum, right in front of the deity, all while a supermassive queue waited on the other side for this opportunity. We couldn't believe it. We were standing right in front of the deity. We prayed, received the flowers, and prasadam, religious offering, from the priest of the inner sanctum, and came out. This whole thing must have taken 5 minutes at most. Once we were out, we wanted to thank the cop for taking us in there, so we looked for him, but we couldn't find him anywhere in the temple premises. We walked up to the other cops and asked for him, even described his appearance, but they said there wasn't anybody there matching that description. After the trip, we traveled back home, and within a week's time, multiple things in my life, both academically and emotionally, which were causing me great torment over the past couple years, all changed for the best. The whole experience was something out of this world. It almost felt like the deity herself sent somebody to bring us close to her and hear all of our prayers, even if we didn't spell it out for her. That's an incident that will stay with me forever. 2. An incident which, for a sciencey and logical guy like me, keeps me thinking sometimes. I was in school, I think around 7th grade, and I had relatives in Mumbai who I used to visit in the summer holidays. During the holidays, our usual plan would involve visiting some places in and around Mumbai with my first cousin, sister, and a gang of other cousins from my aunt's side. So the summer holidays were upcoming in a couple of months, and I was living in Delhi at the time. And I used to have a lot of dreams, some of which I could remember. Those days I was very interested in taking notes on my dreams and thinking out loud to myself what I dreamt about when I woke up. I think I was researching Silva mind control method, some obscure 90s thing. So I remember I had 2 distinct dreams about some place where I was with my family. That place had red gravel roads everywhere. The first dream was about me standing in a backyard of sorts with mangroves and other fruit trees and laughing and walking around. This was a hazy one. The second dream, which was super lucid, was me having a stroll with my family and my sister on a red gravel road. There were leather shoe shops on the side of the road, and I had a leather stick whip in my hand, the kind you use on horses. I was holding her hand and walking. At a distance, I saw these small young trees planted on the right side of the road, having these green metal mesh enclosures. As I walked forward, I reached that tree, and I suddenly trip over a rock and fall. And just like Inception, my dream breaks from that fall. I woke up. I remembered this dream, but as 2 months went by, it dissolved from my mind. After all, what would I do with it? Cut to summer holiday. I reached Mumbai and we made a plan to visit this hill station called Mathurin, where I had never in my life been before, let alone hearing any details about it. My family booked their favorite bungalow there, and off we went. It was very interesting old colonial bungalow surrounded by mangroves and lush green trees with a huge backyard. I think on the second day of the holiday I was roaming around in the space when I remembered my first dream. It was exactly the same backyard. I had goosebumps, but I soon dismissed it as deja vu and didn't think much of it. On another day, my family decided to take an evening walk. Mathurin has lots of horses apparently, and I bought a cowboy hat of sorts with a whip. I started walking holding my sister's hand, and as I took a turn toward the main market, my eyes went down on the road, and I realized the road was red gravel. A chill went down my spine. Before that I had plenty of deja vus, but never had remembered a dream while it was being recreated right in front of my eyes. I lifted my eyes up as I walked. I saw there were leather shoe shops and a young tree in the distance. I remember all of my dream instantly at that moment. My feet were on autopilot of sorts, just walking forward. My mind was trying to grapple with this realization. I saw the tree, and it had green metal mesh around it. As I approached it, I really wanted to stop and halt, but it felt too late to do anything about it. I knew I will fall if I walk further. 1 step, 2 steps. My mind is screaming, watch out. I came just a couple of steps away from the tree. I turned and saw my sister's face. I turned back towards the road and I fucking fall. Right down on my knees, scraping it. There are deja vus, a sort of error and rewrite memory thread in our heads. But having 2 dreams in a row about the same place which I've never seen or heard about in this happening, well, it always makes me think to this day about the nature of things. Number 3. This happened a long time ago, about a decade, I guess. I was chilling with a cousin of mine, smoking, and just exchanging stories because it had been a while since I had met him. It was in the middle of the night and the lights were out. There was some light coming in through the windows, so there was no problem in seeing things. I was holding a small bag in my hand, just letting it dangle there, and something pulled at it, like it got dragged in the air slowly along with my hand tugging behind. I didn't pay much attention at first because I guess the movement was too slight at first. And then my whole fucking arm gets yanked strongly into air. I screamed. Honestly, I was terrified. At this, my cousin gets up quickly and switches on the light. And get this, he is smiling. And he doesn't ask me what happened or anything of that sort. He asks me, "Did you feel something?" It was so strange, like this was an expected occurrence for him. He then goes on to tell me that there's something in that room. It had begun when he had started chilling in that room about a few weeks ago, while just smoking and watching TV and stuff at night, while someone having a few quiet hours for themselves. He had started feeling such a presence and was fearful at first. And then he thought to himself, what is the absolute worst that could happen? And with that thought, he overcame his fear and he let it be. He said that he is now quite aware of the presence and is kind of bonded with it. He doesn't like it when he indulges in any sort of substance usage, intoxication, etc., and often shows some hostility when he does. One more thing that he said was that in some moments it passes through him at times. For me to have encountered such an incident and the kind of matter-of-fact explanation that followed, it was a bit overwhelming. I am really unsure about what to make of all this. Number 4. I'm born and raised in Dubai. Since most of you are familiar with the country, there's a city called Ras Al Khaimah. In this city, there's a spooky abandoned village, like a complete tiny village that has empty houses that look like it was abandoned in a rush. Some still have like turned over tables and stuff. None of these houses have any doors or windows, so they're structures which you can look inside and even see the insides have been swallowed by the desert. This happened at least 10 years ago. This abandoned village is kind of famous now. A lot of people visit it just for horror. But back then, nobody really knew about this place. We came to know about it because of our local friends. So one night, 12 of us in 3 cars decided to go check this out. Of course, we decided to do it at night. We reached this place around 2 a.m. At one point, we decided to stop and get out for a smoke. So while smoking, one of us finds an app called Ghost Hunter. It's a legit iPhone app. The atmosphere is creepy enough, but honestly it's just an empty desert space with structures. So one of us downloads that app and starts checking it out. So the app has this big radar screen, like you see in movies that ships use when there's a missile attack. So a big radar screen with the line moving in circles as if it's searching. So if it finds a ghost, it will come up as a red dot. So while using this app, it showed a red dot in one corner of the screen. Just for jokes, we decided to check out the area where the red dot was. And we were just fooling around, going towards the red dot. Mind you, it's around 2 a.m. Our car is behind a few houses now, and earlier we had our cars for light, but now it's just camera torches and it's pitch black. Very faint moonlight. So while walking towards this red dot, we realized that the structure we are walking towards is a mosque. I'm not gonna lie, this freaked the fuck out of us. Like genuine shivers down the spine. As always, every group has to do for the big dig. with something to prove, and ours did too. So the three of us decided to walk into the mosque. I didn't. I stayed back with the others and lit a few cigs. So we can see these guys walking towards the mosque, and after like 100 meters, all we can see is their phone torches moving towards the mosque. And like 2 to 3 minutes later, they were in, so no light. Literally after like less than 5 minutes, we see the phone torch light moving at us frantically. And it looks as if someone's running with the phone light in hand. It's Jay. Jay's like 5'8" and 100 kilograms. At that time, he was bolting. I've known this guy my whole life. I never saw him move that fast, ever. So he completely runs past us, doesn't even stop for a second. And all of us are thinking he's just fucking with us. When we see the other two guys coming after him as well, we asked them what happened, and they just said we have no clue, but he just screamed and ran out of there. We were like, he must have got scared, or he's just fucking with us, let's go find him. We went towards the car and realized that Jay's left with the car. This freaked us out, and more than freaked, we were pissed. Like, why the hell's this guy taking it this far? Everyone crammed into the two cars, and like 3 or 4 kilometers down the road, he's pulled to the side of the road and his driver's side door is open. He's sitting with his legs outside the car. We got up to him and realized that he has puked as well and is completely soaked in sweat. We asked him what happened, and he said he feels really sick, like high fever and shivering. We asked him what happened, and he told us. When he was inside the mosque, they walked in a little bit, and he started hearing a voice in his head, whispering first, "Kill them, kill them, kill them all, kill them." It started slowly at first, and then started screaming in his head, "Kill them, kill them all, kill them." And that's when he ran. Number 5. This one is so old I don't know if it was real or just a dream. My mom used to take me to the rooftop and just let me play around when I was just a kid. One of those days while playing, I turn around when the sky got darker and see my mom wasn't there. I panic and shout, but no voice is coming out of my mouth. It was a surreal struggle. My body moved on basic survival instinct. I didn't even walk, just crawled on the floor to the staircase. Just before I stepped down, I hear feather sounds and my body went light. I don't even know why I turned around, but I did. And that scene haunts me even to this day. I'd rather not describe it. So anyway, I didn't scream or react when I saw it. Just observed it moving around the rooftop. I don't know how long after, but I just crawled down the stairs and went to the living room. I find my mom and dad are watching TV, and everything after that is blank. The more I think of it, the more I feel it was a dream. Several years after that incident, I spoke about it to my mom, and she said she never left me alone on the rooftop. But here's the catch. I genuinely remember another incident where she forgot I was on the roof. Daytime, and it was just a couple minutes, way after the first incident. So I don't know if she lied or just never knew. One side, how can she not remember me coming down on my own from the roof that late at night? It is practically impossible. On the other side, it felt fucking real. I still remember the gravel and the stairs and the feather sounds. Having been with birds now, it frightens me more how accurate it was. I just can't seem to brush it off as a nightmare. P.S. Totally different incident. But it made this a bit more sensible to me. In one of the trips we had, We went to this temple that was quite notorious for being visited to fight off black magic. We just happened to cross by, and Mom, being an ideal Indian mom, wanted to visit. So we did, and we had this reading done. And they said we had a bad spirit lingering in the form of a bird, and it's causing all these bad lucks, etc. The latter part I didn't need, but the bird part made me remember what I had forgotten ages ago. I kept quiet at that point. Saying it out just meant more days of running around, holy cleansing everywhere. Number 6 happened 3 years ago. My father was bedridden after his accident, and I was sleeping in his room, and so was my mom, who was on a cot while we were on a bed at the floor. We have 2 windows with grills. Around 2 or 3 a.m., Father was asleep after being tired, and so was Mom. Saw a huge black bird bigger than a kite flying around inside the room trying to get out. My mom woke up too and told me to take a shawl to put on it and try to get it out of the room and guide it to fly out of the balcony, which is what I tried to do. But then realized that the bird wasn't a crow like my mom and I presumed, and it did not utter any sound while inside, only flying around trying to get out. Finally it went out of the room, but now it was in the living room on the floor, staring at me with red-hot eyes. No sound made, just staring. I tried to cover it with the shawl again, but it didn't work, as it ducked me and I felt it getting bigger, around 2 feet in size. After a point, the staring sort of freaked me, believe me. I felt as if it was mocking me. I took the broom from the kitchen and tried to push it, but it wouldn't budge. I really don't know what came over me, but I wanted to Hulk mode and smash the bird more than a dozen times with it. At last, it gave a blood-curdling cry like a baby which was hurt, or a dog getting hit by a vehicle sound and just dropped. One of the scariest sounds I had ever heard in my life. No blood or anything on the floor, just a motionless body with red staring eyes. Adrenaline kicked in, and I knew what I had to do. I scooped it and went all the way to the balcony and threw it out in the street. Surprisingly, no sound came of it hitting the ground. I found no trace of it in the morning, no feathers, no leftovers from the dogs, etc. on the pavement where I threw it. All this happened and no one except my mom and I know of it. Even my mom did not hear the scary sound it made me in. Amazingly, my father, who was the lightest sleeper, did not wake up even for a second during the whole ordeal. And it was rare that he slept soundly the whole night. This incident actually does not scare me, but there's no logical explanation to it. How did the bird get in the room, which had grilled windows, with 3 people inside since 11 a.m.? How did no one hear the commotion, which went on for nearly an hour? How did the bird, it wasn't a crow or a kite, be so silent, but let out such a beastly cry at the end? My mind boggles me, but I have to let it be one of the unsolved mysteries of my life. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.